Good morning on a rainy morning here in Freehold, New Jersey. This is George Zilbergeld, Citizens Going Wild, and I have, as usual, a few complaints. First of all, Sam Jacobs has a problem. It may not seem like a problem, but it is a problem for him. He has too much money, and his money, well, he views his money that he has as ill-gotten gains. He is one of about 1,000, maybe 2,000, maybe 3,000 or 4,000 millennials who have inherited a great deal of money. And for these people, they feel that they are somehow not worthy, and the money came from bad policies. The money is money that they inherited, and it can be millions or tens of millions, or in one case at least 100 million. And I'm going to have to read some of this, which you should never do, but I don't care. Mr. Jacobs is a trust fund kid and an anti-capitalist. Now that's rare. Most people just say, I'm going to party on with the money that I have gotten for nothing in particular, but will intend to enjoy. But he's different. And also I want you to take note of how many of these people are Jewish. It's remarkable. We should feel, well, other people have done stuff to us. They should feel guilty. But we have so many Jews who feel somehow they should feel guilty. And I'll tell you why these people feel guilty. Another one was Rachel Gelman. I was always taught that this is just the way the world is, that my family has wealth and others don't, and that because of that, I need to give some of it away, but not necessarily question why it was there. In other words, she comes from a family that was basically what I would call a good family. They said, look, we have a lot of money, other people don't. We are obligated to give some of our money to the people who have less. But that was not enough for Rachel. Her politics are anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, and abolitionist. I'm not sure about abolitionist. But anyway, there are people who are devoted to ending inequality, including the movement for Black Lives Matter. And she, in addition, is also for abolishing prisons. My money is mostly stocks, which means it comes from underpaying and undervaluing working class people. And that's impossible to disconnect from the economic legacies of indigenous genocide and slavery. Once I realized that, said Ms. Gelman, I couldn't imagine doing anything with my wealth besides redistributing it to these communities. The wealth millennials are inheriting came from a mammoth distribution, taking away money from the working masses, creating a super rich tiny minority at the expense of a fleeting American dream that is now out of reach to most people, says Richard D. Wolff. I'm also guessing kind of Jewishy. A Marxist and emeritus economist, a professor at the University of Massachusetts, who's written a great deal about inequality and Marxism's attitude toward inequality. And he says his students were more open to hearing that message, inequality is their fault and they must do something about it, than people were before a recent era. Now, here's another fellow, Pierce Delahunt, not Jewish, I would guess, 32, a socialist, anarchist, Marxist, communist, who has a trust fund that is financed by his former stepfather's outlet mall empire. And you might think, well, what harm do outlet malls do? Except, people buy a little too much because it's such a deal. Well, he says, even when I think about outlet malls, I think about intersectional oppression. That's the originally, okay, the indigenous land that each mall was put on. That's a problem right there. Okay. And in addition, you have low wages paid to the retail workers there, the retail and cook service workers, disproportionately people of color, and the carbon emissions of manufacturing and transporting the goods. Mr. Delahunt donates $10,000 a month. There's nothing wrong with these people. I mean, I have no great criticism of them, except perhaps their understanding of the way capitalism works and why I think it's a pretty good deal for everyone, especially if you have a decent government that takes care of the various flaws that occur in a capitalist system. But Mr. Delahunt donates $10,000 a month, divided among 50 groups, and they all have an anti-capitalist mission. Here's someone else. Margie, M-A-R-G-I, Davshevsky, lives in Alaska and gets her guidance on charitable giving from an advisory team of 3 women activists from indigenous and black power movements. You know, when I was younger, I would have made fun of this, but these are not bad people. These are not bad people. She, like other folks, are connected to an agency called Resource Generation. It's also a website, of course. And if you go to Resource Generation, you'll find that they have some nice ideas there. They're basically concerned with putting ideas into practice. I am principally concerned with blowing my nose. But now I stopped. This nonprofit, Resource Generation, offers programming that encourages members to see capitalism not as a market-based equalizer promising upward mobility, but as a damaging system predicated on, as Resource Generation puts it, stolen land, stolen labor, and stolen lives. Marxism in general is a way of looking at the world that sees everyone either as an oppressor or a person who's oppressed. There's no in between in Marxism. You either are oppressing other people, and that's where you're getting your wealth from, and that's bad, or you're an oppressed person, and you should wise up. Some of these people seem to be gaining awareness. For example, one says, Sam Vinal, there were many angry conversations around the dinner table when I was an impatient, arrogant brat. He's now 34. And I think he has enough self-awareness to realize he sounded like a shrieking idiot when he was younger. But he's changed since then, but he still is interested in helping people. Some of the wealthiest people are transracial adoptees. That's, I think, like when a white person in the United States adopts someone from India, which indeed is the story of Elizabeth Baldwin, a Democratic socialist in Cambridge, Massachusetts, who was adopted from India by a white family when she was a baby. And now she has a great deal of money. And she feels, I get rich because other people aren't getting rich. In other words, there's no such thing as neutral in this world of leftists. These are actually pretty nice people. And they mean to do well, and I suspect some of their efforts will pay off. But they view the world is a problem for people like this. They are not at ease with their identity. They are not at ease in this world. And they think by making certain changes in the world, which they can do because they have extra money, it will make the world better. And I suspect they all realize it will make their own lives better if they feel badly about their position in the world, instead of being rich and living off of other people, oppressing other people, extracting money from other people, they will now feel that they are a good person. And I hope they do. And I hope once they do, they get on with their lives and obsess about something more important, like how their children are doing in school. It'll be interesting if anyone does a follow-up on these people to see what they are doing and how they're doing, and if they still feel run over by life or they're a little more at ease in their position in this world. I hope so. One of the problems that Biden will face, and boy, he's got a basket full, is what to do about China. And this is a damn tough issue. People in the West, people in Europe, and people in the United States are beginning to worry that somehow China's taken advantage of them. And they were often right in this. Although we did this to ourselves, I would argue. It's very hard to push back against China. And some of you may be thinking, well, why? We're a powerful nation. Yes, we are. But we're not all powerful, and neither is Europe all powerful. And I suspect if we don't get to Europe and come to a reasonable understanding with China, we're going to have a lot of trouble in the upcoming years. Basically, I think China is just more courageous than we are at this point, in that they take steps, and then if you take any steps, retaliatory steps against them, they retaliate hard. Here's an example. Australia, which I've always liked because they seem like a nice group of people. And they don't cause any trouble. Occasionally they get involved in certain stupid ideas like bungee jumping from bridges or dwarf throwing, but they usually recover after a time. Here's the deal. Australia, in recent years, it was already a middle-class society, but they have become truly a wealthy country. And the main reason is they've been selling stuff to China. They sell basically raw materials. And they also sell rock lobster, but that's another story. They have been selling China vast amounts of coal, wine, barley, cotton. Well, I guess those aren't raw materials except for the coal. But it has created a great deal of prosperity in Australia, and now they face a problem. They, last spring, they called for an investigation into the origins of coronavirus. That's all. Let's take a look. Let's see where it came from so we can do something about it next time, or the next problem, we can do something about that one. And they said that they suspected that China was in violation of free trade norms. Okay. China first let $3 million worth of Australian rock lobster die in Shanghai customs. And then they blocked one after another products coming from Australia, which shook it. Australia's a fairly small country compared to, let's say, China, certainly, and the United States. The point here is that if you mess with China, if you even say something, they will not hesitate to retaliate. They are tough people, or at least the government is a tough group there. So what do? Do you just go along with it, or do you fight back? Now, Trump was the first president that I know of that fought back. Before this, the idea of the, I was going to say arrogant son of a bitches, but I won't, in the State Department, and presidents like Clinton thought, well, look, China's kind of backward, and we'll bring them into this civilized world. And as they become more prosperous, and as they hang around us, and as they talk to us, they will learn for us that they have to act in a more civilized way, that they have to act in a more reasonable fashion. that they are now part of the establishment, and we will, in effect, rule the world together with them. But everyone has to act in a reasonably honest, reasonably straightforward manner. We are the civilized world. We are not the mafia. And so what happened? Well, China started to act poorly in a number of ways. They, for example, stole their intellectual property, which is how do you make a cell phone and things like that. They stole a lot of it. If you wanted to do business in China, they said, well, you can do business, but basically you have to teach our people how to make this refrigerator, washer, dryer, cell phone, whatever. And of course, you can expect that 5 years later, we will sell these products back to you for half the price and win the market. Now, this whole attitude of making the world dependent on China, but China not dependent on the rest of the world, has led to a lot of problems here. President Trump, whatever else you have to say about him, was the first and so far the only person to push back. He just pushed back. And it was a brave thing to do. People don't give him credit. In fact, they yell at him. They say, look, you caused the farmers in Iowa to lose money. Yes, he did. And he knew he would. And that's why no other president did this. Because they knew it would lead to political problems for them, that the farmers would blame them. And they did. And it was costly, but it was kind of courageous from a guy that many people think of in many terms, but certainly not courageous. So now what are we going to do? Biden has a tough as hell problem here. What most reasonable people want him to do is get together with our Western allies, work together, and make reasonable demands on China and enforce them. That's easy to say. I just said it. But it's very hard to do because the Europeans can't agree amongst themselves about much of anything. And they certainly have trouble agreeing with us about just about anything. But he has to do this, I think, to solve this problem, which is going to be an ongoing problem. What will Biden do? This is a really tough test for him. I don't have the answers, and I doubt that he does, but he's got to do something about this. We'll see what will happen here. And I think it'll be kind of interesting. One thing that you've been reading about or watching about is the replacement of personnel that's coming on board now in the Biden administration. I say replacement, they aren't quite in position, but pretty soon they will be in position in the State Department, in the Agriculture Department, in the Foreign Policy Department. I mean, all of the people that will be appointed, about 7,000, have to be appointed pretty soon here, and they'll be in charge from now on in. I say 7,000, that's the number usually given in what's called the Plum Book, which has the plum assignments in it, the most important positions that have to be filled by any incoming administration. And so Biden is under a lot of pressure, as all presidents are, to get the right people. Now, the right people will often be designated as having a PhD, as being experts in their field, as being extremely knowledgeable. Maybe so, maybe not. What I'd like you to do is keep in mind that just because you have a PhD doesn't mean you have an ounce worth of common sense. And as proof of that, I dug up this example. And in 1942, the Germans had what is called the Wannsee Conference. This is the time they came up with the final solution, the idea of killing every single Jew in the world. This is the Wannsee Conference, January 1942. And they divided the Germans are well organized, if nothing else. And they divided the needs of the people who are going to do the killing into 14 departments. You bring the poisonous gas. You provide for transportation. You get hold of the railroad cars. You think of a way we can lull the Jews into not realizing what's happening. You deal with foreign countries that might criticize us. On and on. 14 departments. Of these 14 departments planning mass murder, 11 had doctorates, not an undergraduate degree. None apparently were dropouts. Not a master's degree, but PhDs. So if you think that because a person has a PhD, they are somehow a reputable expert, think again, calm down, and think again. To add to this fandango, I'm going to read something else. Oh, here's something. The New York Times thinks that they are often right and yell at people who don't realize that the New York Times knows all. This is an article that came out when Hitler was let out of prison. Hitler was tried to stage a coup against the government of the time, the Weimar Republic, using violence, and he was arrested and put in jail for 9 months. He used that time to write his book, Mein Kampf, My Struggle, and work out some of his policies. And after 9 months, the judge let him out early. He was sentenced to 5 years. And the New York Times commented about Hitler, and it said, Adolf Hitler, once the demagogue of the reactionary extremists, was released on parole for an imprisonment at Fortress Landsberg, Bavaria today, and immediately left in an auto for Munich. He looked like a much sadder and wiser man than last spring when he, with Ludendorff, appeared before a Munich court charged with conspiracy to overthrow the government. His behavior during imprisonment convinced the authorities that, like his political organizations known as the Volksscheier, were no longer to be feared. It is believed, this is the New York Times, the experts, that he will retire to private life and return to Austria, the country of his birth. Wrong. Just because someone in an important position, like the editor of the New York Times, like the commentators on CNN, CNBC, and Fox News, say something with authority and hundreds of thousands or even millions of people listen and nod, does not mean they're right. Just keep that in mind the next time an expert comes up with a damn expert idea. That doesn't mean you shouldn't listen to experts, but you should always be aware that experts are wrong as well. Here's something that happened a while back that involved a lot of experts. And years ago, there was a trial of a guy named John Hinckley, who was basically a deranged idiot. He tried to assassinate Ronald Reagan. I don't know why. I know. He wanted to impress a Hollywood star, and I don't know where he planned to go on a second date. But anyway, he was tried, and one of the things that came up was his mental health. Now I'm going to read what a number of people said about Hinckley's mental health. The experts, this is what they said. Hinckley suffers from process schizophrenia. Dr. William T. Carpenter. He viewed him at length after the assassination attempt. Hinckley does not suffer from schizophrenia by Dr. Dietz, an expert, a specialist in forensic psychiatry. Here is someone else. Hinckley was suffering from a very severe depressive disorder. He's a psychologist from, wait for it, Yale University. Very nice. Here we go, another expert. CAT scans reveal no evidence of a significant abnormality whatsoever. Okay, here's yet another expert. There's no possible way you can predict people's behavior or whether they're schizophrenic or not from a CAT scan, period. So much for your damn CAT scans. Anyway, this goes on with different experts with totally different ideas. All I'm saying is, as experts appear on your television screen or wherever else these experts appear in your life, take it easy, take a breath. Maybe even check to see if someone else disagrees with them. And don't be intimidated by the number of years they sat in a chair in school. Just don't. The experts who have PhDs don't have a great record. I mean, this is outside of areas like medicine and physics where they do have a good record. Here's a great quotation by a most wonderful man. This is Theodore Roosevelt, a great president who I think a lot of people should read more about him and less about others. Anyway, he said this: press on. Nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education alone will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. Damn good quote. But here's also a good one. You will become less concerned with what other people think of you when you realize they seldom do think of you. I'll say that again. You will become way less concerned about what other people think of you when you realize how seldom they do think of you. That's all I have for today. I'm going to ask my man Ming, a very good man, by the way, to end this session. And I hope you'll listen in next week at Monday at 11 o'clock. I'll have more stray thoughts that you might well agree with.